Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we have a really cool figure to take a look at, and it's actually a figure I've been wanting to get a hold of for a very long time, but for some reason was just never able to pull the trigger on it. I recently did, however, and I am really excited to take a look at it finally with you guys. This is the Edage Tarbosaurus, and it's a figure, again, that's been out. Actually, I think the date right there, 2017, so it's been out for 3 years already, and it's just a figure I thought looked really cool, not so much like a Tarbosaurus, but still really cool nonetheless, but I was never able to just pull the trigger. I always kind of put it off in hopes of finding it at a later date for a cheaper price, and never seemed to pan out that way, so I just finally went ahead and purchased the figure, and you could see there at the front of the box looks really cool, very Rebor-like, I will say, as far as the box art goes. I feel like that's probably where they got their inspiration from, is Rebor, because these boxes look like they're almost identical to the way Rebor presents themselves. But again, a really cool image of the dinosaur right there on the front, kind of an image of it walking along there, and then you don't have too much else going on as far as the box goes, but I'm really psyched to get this out and take a look at it, so let's go ahead and break it out of its box right now. So the figure actually comes with a base, and here is the base sporting a nice, really cool looking like beach scene where the dinosaur can be walking along. So we've got a base to go with our Tarbosaurus, and then here is the figure itself, which honestly is actually quite nicely done, and I'm really quite impressed with it. Again, not really looking much like a Tarbosaurus if you ask me, but really cool looking regardless. It's probably also not standing on the base in the correct spot right now as I just kind of set it down, but definitely a really nice look and pretty high quality overall. And I'm not a huge fan of the base at this point, but maybe a closer look will change that. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at both right now. So of course, starting with the Tarbosaurus, the dinosaur here, the main event, I guess you could say, you can see that the detailing of the figure is actually pretty nicely done. There is quite a bit as far as skin texture going on here with the head sculpt of the dinosaur, and I definitely quite like the head sculpt. Again, I think it looks more like a V-Rex as opposed to a Tarbosaurus. It definitely has a pretty decent look, and the sculpt and paint job actually is nicely done. You can see the detailing around the eyes fairly nicely done. You can also see that the eye is painted with like a goldish coloration and a black pupil. It might look a little sloppy. It's tough to tell as that is a pretty small eye. The nostrils are sculpted out up here at the tip of the snout. And then if we take a look down here, I love the inside coloration of the mouth. You can see a really nice coloration as far as like a very realistic tone of a light pinkish red type of a coloration. And then there's a nice dark wash that seems to be included within, giving that tongue in the inside of the mouth some nice color variation and looking really realistic. You can also see there's a beautiful gloss coat added in there as well to make that inside of the mouth shine quite realistically overall. Beautiful on both sides. I will say I really love the inside of the mouth, and the jaw articulates nicely. It's a little stiff right now, but it seems to move really well and kind of stay in each position that you put it in. The teeth are nicely sculpted also, but the paint, it looks a little thick as far as the teeth go. You can see it's kind of jumbled in a few areas, but it's definitely not anything that's bad, and not anything I think that the paint is too thick and makes the figure look ugly. I don't think it takes away at all from the figure. The teeth themselves might look a little bit too large, but I love the fact that you can actually see the gums have been painted as well the entire way through, and also all really nicely glossed, which I really do want to state how nice that gloss coat looks. Beautiful salivy, very nice wet-like appearance to the inside of the mouth. You can also see the eye up here actually looks a lot nicer on this side as opposed to the other side. As far as the paint application goes, it doesn't look quite as sloppy. I will say that I would have liked to have had more of like a darker coloration there for the inside of the nose. As you can see, it's just kind of like almost like a white, but it is what it is. It's just a very small nitpick, I think, with the nose area of the dinosaur. There's also quite a bit of really nice color variation here on the head sculpt of the dinosaur. Lots of really nice paint included. There's almost like a reddish coloration around the eye and up into the palate area, but then there's a lot of like browns and variations of brown, darker and lighter tones of brown, as well as some nice dry brushing that's been done to bring that detail out quite nicely. As we start to move down into the body, you can see some ridges that run along the back of our dinosaur, and the neck is very nicely shaped as well. You can see as we turn it, you can really get a good sense of the form and the shape of the neck, and even the bone structure within is nicely shown there. Some nice skin folding going on right in that area as well. beautiful skin texture as we move down into the body. You can pick up on the shoulder blade a little bit right there. Very nice small arms like you would hope to see on a Tyrannosaur type species here like this. Very nicely painted nails. They actually look pretty decent for the most part. You have some nice kind of creasing going on right there at the joint of the arm. More nice skin folding going on as the leg's pushing into the body. It would be bunching that skin up quite nicely right there. And the skin texture looks really good the whole way through. I really love, actually, the paint application. I think is really nicely done on this figure. Shockingly well done and looks very good, high quality type of a paint application with many different tones of color included. You have some more really beautiful detailing here on the underside of the figure as well, and there is the Edage title right there that we can see kind of creeping through a little bit. Now this actually says the figure was made in 2016, but that might have been when it was made, but released in 2017. Coming back up here, you can see some more nice creasing going on both sides of the leg. The leg's moving forward, so you're just seeing some of the movement of the skin that would be taking place at that point in time. The ridges continue to run down the back of the animal. We get a much larger scaling here above the hip region, coming out into the tail a little bit right there, and that's also been nicely dry brushed over. And again, you can see how many different variations of brown is included within the figure, and the paint job is really nicely done. As we move down the legs are huge. You can see very muscular legs in both the calf and thigh regions of the dinosaur. Very nice kneecap right there in the front displayed. And then as we get down into the foot sculpt looks it looks okay. It's definitely not the best, that's for sure, but it's okay for what it is. The toes are incredibly short, so that is definitely a pretty big issue, and the nails appear to be painted pretty nicely, but they're also quite stocky and short as well. We do have a dew claw though, which I was really intrigued to see, so that's a plus, but the foot sculpt as a whole isn't really that great. Moving back up into the tail, you could see some more really nice skin texturing going on, kind of some osteoderms as we lead out the length of the tail. There's also a really nice striping effect that picks up, that runs out the rest of the tail. The tail has a really nice natural looking curve to it, I think. Nothing that I can't see a dinosaur like this pulling off. And then if we turn the dinosaur around, you can now see some really nice detailing over here as well, with the kind of skin stretching off of the body a little bit with the head turning to the right. There's actually a really nice curve to the entire body here as it's walking along. I really actually quite like that curve as well. And then you can see the shoulder blade sort of protruding from the skin there, a little bit of skin folding going on, again showing some of the movement of the dinosaur, a little bit of hanging skin in the throat as well. Nicely sculpted out arms over here, beautifully dry brushed, which brings that detail out quite nicely. Some more creasing going on at the base of the arm. Over here we can see the skin stretching a little bit more so than we saw on the previous side, as now this leg is pulling the skin back, stretching the skin. You can get a better idea of what the stomach region of the dinosaur looks like over here as well. Really beefy, very well-fed dinosaur, which is a plus. I don't see too much going on as far as like looking like a skinny animal. It definitely looks very well-fed, very beefy, which is a good plus for this figure for sure. As we move back here, you can now see the hip bone again kind of protruding from the skin a little bit there. Get a sense of the musculature. That thigh is absolutely gigantic, but the calf muscle is extremely large as well, very bulging as far as that calf muscle goes. And then coming down into the foot, again, the foot sculpt is okay, but nothing to write home about. But the paintwork on the figure is really beautiful for the most part in every area that I look at on the figure. And again, we lead back here, we get some more of those osteoderms and some more of that really nice striping effect that runs out the length of the tail. And you can even see some variations of browns and everything as we lead out the length of the tail. So the figure as a whole is like hit or miss, I think, as far as the sculpt goes. Some parts of it are really nice, like the paint job. I actually am a pretty big fan of, but then if you look at it from the aspect of it being a Tarbosaurus, it's not really that great. But as a whole, again, the figure is pretty cool, I will say that. And then the base itself, which appears to have been made with a resin, because it has a very heavy feel to it. You can see it has a nice soft underside, so it shouldn't move around on your table or anything or damage anything. But the water itself has a pretty nice glossy look to it, so it kind of appears to look like water, which is definitely a plus. The actual beach area looks pretty cool as well. You can see lots of pebbles and everything sticking out here on the beach, so that aspect of the base looks very realistic as well. I think the worst part probably is the water, even though the water looks pretty nice, but it just doesn't look that realistic because it's just like painted and not painted all that well, but I still think it looks pretty cool, just it could have looked better. But once we actually get up here into the earthy area, I feel like the base looks really, really nicely done. Beautiful rocks and everything going on. Very nice earthy-like appearance to the dirt and everything. Beautiful twigs and branches and everything that are laying in certain areas, and the paint application is really nicely done. Beautiful tones of color used, and I feel like the paint and everything looks great for the most part as far as the base goes, and you have some nice vegetation here and there on the base as well, which is also quite beautifully painted. So the base definitely looks really cool, but at the same time the water not so great but not bad either. Really cool addition, though, to have this with the figure. I'm not entirely sure where exactly you are supposed to stand your dinosaur on the base, as it's not clear. There's no area with, like, footprints or anything that's specific to where your dinosaur should stand. So I guess it's pretty much up to you, wherever you want to put him. I'll just stand him like that, like he's about to step into the water, and I think it still looks pretty cool. As far as a size goes, this figure is definitely quite large, really sporting a pretty significant size. So if we go from the tail to the tip of the snout, you are looking at about 14 inches, actually almost 14¼ inches, or about 36 centimeters for a length. So a pretty sizable figure, and if it's on the base to the top of the head, you are looking at around the 5¾ inch range, or about 14½ centimeters, actually maybe even close to 15, actually it is about 15 centimeters, somewhere in that range. And for a height, if you are going to continue to keep the dinosaur on the base, you're looking at closing in on 5¾ inches, or almost 6 inches, or about just under 15 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to our Edage Tarbosaurus, and you can see next to these figures here again that this figure does have some pretty darn good size, quite long for sure, and next to the Papo Rex, who is a fairly large figure himself, that should help to give you a good idea that this Tarbosaurus as well is pretty big. So this Edage Tarbosaurus is a figure I've been looking to get my hands on for a very long time, and now that I officially do have my hands on it, I am really quite happy with the purchase, actually. I think this figure costs somewhere in the range of around $40 for this type of quality and the overall size and weight of the figure. I will say it's definitely worth $40, but as far as accuracy goes, that is one huge downside to the figure, because this looks a lot closer to like a V-Rex. I just really get a V-Rex feel from the head sculpt and the overall body mass, and just the way it's kind of sculpted always has kind of reminded me, even in the promotional images, of a V-Rex, and that follows through here with seeing the figure in person. But even still, I will say that the figure, if you don't take it into consideration as being a Tarbosaurus, has a very appealing, very high quality look to it. And I feel like Edage had a lot of potential, or still has a lot of potential. I don't know if they're even around anymore, to be honest, as I haven't really seen any new releases from them in quite a long time. I will say I am definitely impressed with this figure here specifically. The sculpt does sport some really nice detailing overall, but then we have some areas that don't really look that great as far as the sculpt, like the kind of awkward looking feet. But again, as far as like skin texture and skin wrinkles and everything go, and all that fine detail, I think it is really quite nicely done. My favorite part of the figure is definitely the paint job. I feel like the paint job looks really cool, and they've used so many different tones and all kind of realistic darker tones for the figure that I'm definitely quite happy overall as far as the paint scheme goes and the paint job they've given the figure, especially if you look inside the mouth. I love the way the inside of the mouth is painted, and giving the very nice realistic like glosses to the inside of the mouth and the eyes and everything was definitely a very nice touch on the part of Edage. But the sculpt, again, as a whole, I think is nicely done, but the paint job is just beautiful on this figure, as far as really nicely dry brushing certain areas and giving it so many different tones of color. It just looks very realistic as far as the paint job goes. The base is really cool as well, but definitely not that great. I feel like there could have been a better base done, and I think the thing that kills the base is kind of the weird looking water effect. I think the water looks okay, and it doesn't look bad, and I don't want that to come off as me saying that the base looks bad, because it really doesn't. I think the base still looks pretty nice, but that water just doesn't really do it for me. But once you get past the water and you move up into the beach area and then up into the earthy area, I think those two areas look phenomenal and really well done, beautifully sculpted, beautifully painted, and overall has a very realistic and lifelike appearance. So if you are interested in this Edage Tarbosaurus, I will include a link in the description to eBay where I purchased mine. Make sure you head on over there right now after this video is over, but before you take off, go buying this figure, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.